If you're investing for income, then high yield bonds should be on your radar. That's because over a long period of time, they can generate very good total returns. But there have been periods in the past when that wasn't true. So in this video, we'll look at the drivers of return for that kind of bond, but also the risks you're taking when you invest in that asset class. And remember, if you do want to not miss any of our videos, then subscribe to our channel and you can always like this video. So let's look at high yield corporate bonds in a bit more detail. Now, if you're a long-term investor, there's a really simple way to invest. You simply buy the global equity market. You ignore the doom and gloom videos in the interim because most of the time they're wrong. And you simply ride the market up and retire with a large sum of money. So this is the rise in the value of $1 invested in the S&P 500 on January the 1st, 1871. And although it has been a rough ride at times, you can see that most of the time optimism has won and equity markets have risen. But investment is always a trade-off between risk and return. If you have high returns, you may not sleep well at night, and vice versa. And equity tends to be at the higher risk end of that spectrum. High risk, but also high return. But as we saw, the risk isn't so large if you don't sell when markets crash, if you see those crashes as a buying opportunity. But if you are nervous about those market drawdowns, and in particular if you're worried about short-term investments where you could make a loss, then some people decide to invest in government bonds, particularly short-duration government bonds or cash, because that way you don't suffer such a large loss when there's a market crash in equity. But the trouble with government bonds at the moment is that they offer very little yield indeed. Once you compensate for inflation, your return at the moment is very low. So a middle path is to invest in high yield corporate bonds. Now these are bonds which are loans to companies which have very poor credit quality. But in return for taking that higher risk, you'll receive a higher return. So in the remainder of this video, we'll look at what those risks are and also what returns you got historically and why. And a good place to start is what we mean by a high yield corporate bond. A corporate bond is just a tradable loan to a company. And of course, companies come with a wide range of credit quality. Some of them are unlikely to repay your capital because they're in dire circumstances financially, whereas others are very good credit quality and it's almost certain that they'll repay your cash flows. And that's exactly why we have credit ratings. So above me here you can see two companies which have a AAA credit rating. In fact, they're the only companies at the moment which have a AAA credit rating. And those two companies are Johnson & Johnson and Microsoft. So these two companies are almost certain to repay your capital if you lend them money. If you think of credit ratings as a ladder, the next rung down below AAA is AA, and that would include companies like ExxonMobil, Apple and Alphabet, where the credit risk is now a little bit higher, but they still lie comfortably in the investment grade group of companies, because they're still very likely to repay your capital. If we go down another notch, we're at single A, and that would include companies like Pfizer, Salesforce and Siemens, where again the credit quality is a bit lower, but it's still comfortably investment grade. The lowest notch of investment grade would be triple B, and this would include companies like Daimler, Nissan, General Electric. There are lots of car companies around this triple B notch. But once we take one notch of credit quality below triple B, we cross a huge divide. Because now what we've moved into is high yield credit. Some people call these junk bonds or speculative grade credit, because here you've got much higher probabilities of default, the company's not repaying your capital. And that would include companies like SoftBank, Mitsubishi and Ford. Now it's the job of these rating agency companies to rate debt, and you can see the three big ones here, which are Moody's, Standard & Poor's or S&P and Fitch. Now most of the time you'll see people use this AAA, AA, single A, triple B type rating, but sometimes you'll also see the Moody's ratings listed. And again, this line that you can see running horizontally across the page splits the investment grade universe from the high yield universe. Anything which is below triple B, so that runs from double B downwards, would be considered speculative grade or high yield. Or if you use Moody's ratings, that would be BA or lower. Now, usually when I talk about risk, I talk about volatility, but high yield credit is a really nice example of why risk is not the same as volatility. Now, volatility is just a measure of how much prices fluctuate typically in 1 year. So if we look at this S&P tracker for the S&P 500, which is the SPY ETF, you can see that its volatility is around 21%. That means that in a typical year, its price will move up or down by around 21%. But if you look at one of the largest high yield bond ETFs, which is HYG from iShares, you can see its volatility is much lower, just around 12% per year. That's not because it's much less risky. It's not a lot less risky than equity. All it means is that the price fluctuations of high yield corporate bonds tend to be fairly small. That's because they're very illiquid, they tend to not trade that often or as much as equity, but when they make a loss, there's no warning. Suddenly the price drops sharply and they may stop trading altogether. And that's also why it's a good idea to buy these off-the-shelf portfolios of high yield bonds in the form of ETFs or mutual funds, because they're automatically diversified and you won't suffer a catastrophic loss if one company defaults. And if we look at one of the largest investment grade corporate bond ETFs, which is LQD from iShares again, you can see its volatility is not much less than that of HYG. It's around 9%. But just to show you how misleading volatility is as a measure of credit risk, what I've done here is I've shown the volatility of various credit ratings, and that's for the period between 1988 and 2021. Now, if volatility was a good measure of credit risk, what you'd expect is that the BBB, which is the lowest credit quality on this graph, would have the highest volatility. But in fact, that's not true. AAA has the highest volatility. And that's because the volatility of credit funds is driven by their duration, not by their credit quality. And if you want to learn more about bond duration, I've got a whole course about bonds which explains all of that. But that's why you have to look at credit ratings, because that's a much better measure of credit risk. Don't look at volatility. I mentioned the risk-reward trade-off in investing. That also applies very clearly to corporate bonds, as we'll see now. And I think a nice example to show how the compensation rewards you for particular risks is with this Tesla bond, which matures in 2025. So it's got about 4 years to run as I make this video. And if you invest in that bond, you can see it pays you a coupon of 5.3%. Why is that so high? Well, it's because Tesla is a sub-investment grade company. It's a junk bond. And these are the credit ratings from Moody's and Standard & Poor's. And you can see it gets a B2 from Moody's and BB from Standard & Poor's. And that means it's a high yield bond. It's speculative grade and lower credit quality. So if we do buy one of these low credit quality companies, which is BB, how much would we expect to be paid as compensation for taking the company's credit risk? Well, this is the US Treasury yield curve. And what this shows you is for different periods of lending to the US government, how much income you'd receive approximately every year. So if you lend for long periods of time at the moment, you'd get about 2% in terms of yield. Whereas if you lend to the US government over very short periods of time, you can see you get almost no yield at all. But if we match the maturity of that Tesla bond that we saw previously, which is a 4-year bond, if you lent to the US government for 4 years, you'd get a yield of 0.7%. Is that sufficient compensation for Tesla? No, of course it isn't, because they're very risky, whereas the US government is much less risky than Tesla as a counterparty in lending. So what we know for sure is we wouldn't be happy with 0.7%, because that's what you get from lending money to the government, which is almost risk-free. How much more yield should we ask for? Well, what we can do is we can look at other corporate bonds with the same credit rating as Tesla to see how much extra yield they pay to their investors. That extra yield is called a credit spread. You can look that up on the Fred database, and you can see in the case of BB credit, the spread varies over time. So during periods of crisis, it increases above 8%, as you saw in 2020. But the current credit spread, which you can see above me here, is 2.19%. So you get an additional 2% of income. So what we know now is that for a typical BB company, which is what Tesla is, you'd receive a credit spread of around 2.2%. So our combined yield would be at least 2.85%. But is that the only risk we're taking? Actually, no. We're also taking a huge liquidity risk. What's liquidity risk? Well, when the credit market runs into trouble, particularly high yield, it effectively shuts down. It's almost impossible to sell high yield bonds in a big crisis. And that lack of liquidity really hurts in that crisis. So you should receive some compensation for that illiquidity. But how much? Well, if we look at the actual yield on this Tesla bond right now, it's around 4.4% at the moment. So the additional spread that we get for buying that Tesla bond right now would be 1.5%. Now, most of that will be liquidity. There are also some other risks which we take which are less significant. But that's where our 4.4% comes from. The risk-free rate, the credit spread, and the liquidity spread. Those are the layers of the compensation cake for taking those risks. Now, we saw that those risks vary over time, and this is a plot of the credit spreads for different credit ratings in the US versus time going back to before 2000. And it varies hugely over time. And credit tends to go through regimes. So here around the year 2000, you can see that there was a high default rate in the credit market in the US. And one consequence of that was that credit spreads increased as the prices of these corporate bonds fell. So just as with equity, the time to buy high yield credit is during these periods of distress. You wouldn't buy single bonds because they really could default. What you'd buy is off-the-shelf portfolios of high-yield bonds in the form of ETFs or in the form of mutual funds. So around that period in 2000, the CCC spreads blew out to over 20%, and in the global financial crisis, they blew out to over 40% as the market effectively shut down. But notice how those spreads tightened very rapidly, and that occurred as the prices of the bonds recovered from the crisis. So just as with equity, if you're willing to rush into the fire during one of these crisis periods, you do get compensated if you hold your nerve. Now, you might have thought in the tail end of a global pandemic that credit spreads would be fairly wide, but of course they're not. Just as equities rallied massively, credit spreads have tightened massively. So currently CCC is yielding only 5.8%, but more of that later. Now, it's worth mentioning, if you do want to learn more about investing, a good way to do that is as part of our Patreon community. You get to talk to me on Slack, and you get access to a growing library of video content, which is only available to members. And as a member, you also get to vote on what videos I make. So if you did want to learn more about credit, you could always ask for a video about that. Now let's look at the returns you'd have received for high yield credit historically. The problem with high yield credit is that there aren't long-term returns available. But what is available is a long-term history of yield. So the series you can see in blue beneath me is a yield on BBB bonds going all the way back to 1919. So it's just over 100 years of data. And in red here, you can see the level of inflation. Now, the critical thing when investing is that your return should be more than inflation. So you can guess straight away that in the last 20 years, inflation was considerably less than the yield of these bonds, so they performed very well. That wasn't true during that high inflation period in the 1970s. You can see inflation was roughly neck and neck with a yield of BBB for quite a few years during that period. And another problematic period for credit was during the post-war years, when inflation was high and yields were low. So what I've done is reconstruct a total return series for BBB bonds using that yield time series. And what you can see here is the cumulative real return. That's the return above inflation. And immediately you can see that problematic period. In fact, there was a 40-year period when BBB would have just kept in line with inflation. And then in the 1970s, it lost its battle with inflation and the real value of that index fell. But then during the last 40 years, we've had a double tailwind for these bonds. Firstly, yields were falling, and secondly, inflation was kept very well under control for most of that period. So over this period since 1919, equity in the form of the S&P 500 would have returned about 7.6% once you reinvest dividends and once you account for inflation, whereas BBB bonds returned 4.6%. So less than equity, but considerably more than treasuries. And if we break it down by credit rating, the series I have is much shorter. It only goes back to 1988, which was that period of falling yields. But you can see that for AAA, you'd have averaged about 3.9% above inflation. And for that same 35-year period, you'd have got about 4.7% above inflation for BBB. Now, just because high yield is a form of bond does not mean it's a good hedge for equity. And the reason for that is that it falls into the category of risky assets. These are the kind of assets which lose value during a crisis in equity, for example. So look back to March and you'll see the things which sold off were equity, real estate investment trusts, but of course also high yield credit. The assets which maintain their value through these crises are safe haven assets. That would be cash, but also treasuries and gold. A nice illustration of that is during the global financial crisis, where I look at 3 ETFs. The blue line is investment grade credit, that's the highest credit quality. High yield credit via the HYG fund is the green line, and you can see that sold off more than investment grade credit. And the red line above me is the S&P tracker SPY, which lost more than high yield and a lot more than investment grade. And if we look at the correlation between that HYG high yield fund and the S&P 500 tracker SPY, you can see that most of the time the line above me is blue. That means they're positively correlated. Not perfectly positively correlated, the correlation's around 0.6% over that period on average. So you do get some diversification, but not much. Whereas the correlation of investment grade credit with equity is much lower. Notice how the line above me here is often red. That means a negative correlation. But of course, during the crisis period, which is when you want your hedge, you'll find that investment grade falls at the same time as equity, just not very much. If you want a much better hedge against equity falling, then long duration US Treasuries would be much better. So below me, you can see the TLT fund, which is 20-year plus duration Treasuries, has negative correlation with equity almost all of the time. And my last point is why high yield would make a great entry on your crisis shopping list. As we saw from the historical returns in credit, the best periods are when treasury yields are high but also gradually falling, because that way the duration of the bonds generates a mark-to-market gain. And also ideally those yields would be much higher than inflation. But if we look at historic US Treasury yields, and I've used the 5-year Treasury here because high yield tends to have a fairly short maturity, the current yield on 5-year Treasuries, which is what we layer all of those spreads on top of, is very small. It's only 0.9%. That's pretty much the lowest it's ever been. So Treasury yields at the moment are very unfavourable. How about low inflation? If we look at the last 50 years, you can see that inflation isn't particularly high, but it's certainly spiked over the last few months. That's because of the base effects and the bottlenecks that everybody's talking about, but certainly the year-on-year growth of inflation at the moment is pretty high. It's 4.9%. So inflation is also not a tailwind for credit at the moment. However, personally, I agree with the Fed that a lot of those effects on CPI inflation will be transitory. And if that's the case, then the 20-year history of CPI inflation has been very favorable for credit. And then the final thing we'd be looking for is a large credit spread. And again, that's very low. If we look at it historically, it's hardly ever been lower than it is now, which is just 3% for high yield credit. And this reiterates again that the time to buy high yield credit is when yields spike. And that's when you get a big sell-off in corporate credit. So at the moment, credit spreads don't help us either. So this is why I suggest this is something to put into your crisis basket of things to buy. Because although we can't time these things, we know that ultimately there's going to be some kind of crisis again, and this would be a great addition to your shopping list when the crisis hits. So I hope that's given you some ideas about the kind of environment in which high yield credit does well. I think it's definitely a candidate for everyone's shopping list during an equity market crisis, because as we come out of the crisis, you usually get a very rapid tightening of spreads and a rally in those bonds. And so it gives a very good risk-adjusted return during those recovery periods. And as always, thank you for listening.